Hello, everybody. Today I have once again very interesting guest. It's my podcast, it's my video. Very interesting guest, and we will speak about unusual thing because most of us believe that love decides everything, and we stay in our relationship because of love, passion, emotions. But Erik, my guest today, he said that love is irrational, but we try to justify it. And I think it's amazing start of our conversation. So I have today Erik Vermeulen, and he is 20 years in the leadership and consulting experience, and his strategy allows leaders to create more profitable behaviors. And of course, all this knowledge Erik brought to us, it will help you, my dear spectators, to build better relationship and to be happy in love. Erik believes that you cannot motivate people, rather he takes a highly effective behavioral approach to leadership that allows him to influence what people are motivated to do. He shows companies how to build virtual teams that include both their employees and their customers, making a significant impact on the bottom line. Okay, so it's more about companies, but I want to speak about love. I want to speak about love, sorry. Your introduction is amazing, but I want to speak about love. Okay, so can you justify that we justify the love?
Absolutely. I think it's so easy when we fall in love to not really think about beyond today, tomorrow, the next day, because we were caught up in that emotion. And so ultimately what we do is we end up making this decision, but we don't really know why we make it or even how we make that. That starstruck lover syndrome. You see someone across the room, you go up to them, you start chatting to them, and you fall head over heels. And that kind of lasts for a little bit. But we're not sure why we make it, and we keep just living on that emotion, the endorphins, the pheromones, those hormones that drive love behaviors. But I want us to think back, if we are in a long-term relationship or in a committed relationship, I want us to think back to that person that we're in this relationship with and when we first met them. And when I do this exercise with audiences, which I do quite often, and we ask them, who's in a committed relationship, and people put up their hand, and so I then ask them, okay, so who are you in a relationship with? Most people can give me their name. That's pretty simple. And then I ask, well, why is it that you fell in love with your significant other? Specifically, can you give me 3 reasons why, when you met your significant other, you knew that was the person for you? Not Mr. Right now, but Mr. Right or Ms. Right. And what I find interesting is that is an incredibly difficult exercise for the majority of people in my audiences. And, as you're listening to this podcast now, maybe just jot down 3 attributes that your significant other have or had that made you fall head over heels in love with them. It's not easy, and it's going to take you a couple of minutes. What I find then, when I ask audiences to reveal that to me, I find that the list is pretty generic. They were good looking, they were nurturing, caring, confident, maybe spiritual, maybe religious. And so there are no more than 5 or 7 attributes that are universal in terms of what people tell me were those main reasons for falling in love with their significant other. The next question I ask them really throws the cat amongst the pigeons, because I then say to them, okay, did you know anybody else at that time that had the same attributes? Was there anybody else in your circle of friends, in your acquaintances, that ticked the same boxes? And I can virtually guarantee that there were at least 1, 2, maybe 3 other people that you knew at the same time that met all the requirements you were looking for in a partner. And so it wasn't really those attributes that made you fall in love with your significant other, was it? It was something else. It was an emotion. Love is an irrational decision. And so we make this decision based on that feeling, on the emotions, on something that is completely irrational. But then our friends say to us or ask us, you know, why did you fall in love with Frank or Julia or whoever? And all of a sudden, we now have to justify our decision to other people in our network, to our family, to our close friends. And so what do? We go and rationalize our decision after the fact. When we first met them, when we first really fell in love with them, it wasn't necessarily those attributes that made us fall in love with them, because other people had the same mix of attributes. It's something intangible. It's something emotional. And that is what drives that decision. And that's why we fall in love, because it gives us, I heard someone in a movie, I think, and I can't remember which movie, but the character in the movie said that we fall in love with someone who we see as the counterpoint to ourselves. When I do behavioral strategy work or behavioral work with corporate teams and with companies, and now moving that into the couples and relationship space as well, I use a device called the Merrill-Reed grid, which allows us to use behavioral observation to identify 4 thrust behavior styles. So people who are dominant and spontaneous, so what we call expressive. People who are spontaneous and easygoing, we call amiable. People who are easygoing and self-controlled are analytical. And people who are self-controlled and dominant are what we call driver style. Now, don't worry about the intricacies.
I love this system because there are different systems, different names of these 4 types of people. I'm a big fan of it because it's never 100%. But if you know the type of the person, it's really easier to communicate with.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's founded on the same science of transactional analysis, the DISC profile, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, this system that I use, the Merrill-Reed. But what makes the way I use it really powerful is we use behavioral observation. So I don't have to get my partner to fill in a 100-question questionnaire. Anyway, what we find is that, and it's not a golden rule, but we find so often that people in opposite quadrants tend to be in long-term relationships. So expressives are attracted to analyticals because I see in the analytical the weaknesses that I have. And so we look for that counterpoint of ourselves in the person that we fall in love with. But we don't realize that when we fall in love with them. And so instead, when our friends ask us, why did you fall in love with Frank or Julia? We look for ways to justify it after the fact. Never forget, though, that at heart, see what I did there? At heart, it was an emotional and irrational decision.
I told you already before we started recording, I was yesterday in one training, and we had discussion because everywhere where I participate, it's always discussion about love, relationship. All people are interested in it. And we had this discussion about love and making decision, because I said, and I truly believe that love is love. It's nice to have all these emotions, lust, passion, I don't know, all this bunch of feelings, but it's good to have at the beginning. As soon as you start thinking, okay, so it's an exclusive relationship, we move together, we have to understand what I am giving and what I am getting. It's kind of a deal. And really interesting thing, many people, especially women who are, these hard people, very emotional, how can you speak about, living together and thinking about what I'm getting, what I'm giving? Because love is love. 2 hearts came together, 2 halves found each other. What do you think about this, making decisions with heart?
So we tend to make, depending on our behavioral style, that kind of determines how many of our decisions we make based on emotion. Expressives will tend to make decisions faster, more emotionally, by the seat of their pants, without too much forethought. I have a fairly strong expressive side, and I'm only now deciding or wondering what I'm going to have for dinner. And even that's going to change, right? But people who are analytical, they will plan their week's menu. Look at it this way. Let's say an expressive and an analytical are dating. and they want to go away for a weekend, a romantic weekend in the mountains. As an expressive, how do I plan that? Well, I don't. You know, on Tuesday, I will phone up my partner and go, hey, babe, how about we go to the mountains we go and find a log cabin, snow, skiing. We find a cabin in the mountains this weekend and we have a romantic weekend. I can't say that to my analytical partner. If I want to take my analytical partner away for a weekend, I've got to tell her 2 months in advance. And I've got to say, hey, my angel, how about that weekend of the 27th and 28th of January? How about we go skiing in Verbier for the weekend? And she will say, let me think about it. And that's honestly what she's going to do. And she's going to start planning. How are we getting there? Are we driving? Are we flying? Are we using public transport? Where are we going to stay? What are we going to eat? Who's paying for what? Whereas as an expressive, I'm just like, hey, let's get in the car. We go halfway there. I'm like, we haven't got a toothbrush and we don't know what we're going to eat and where we're going to stay. And so
we can buy everything on the way, so it's no problem.
Absolutely. And so you can see how the opposites attract, but also those same opposite tendencies tend to have the potential to create conflict.
Yeah.
You know, I fall in love with the opposite style to mine because I see in them something I haven't got. You know, I look at them and go, man, I'd love to be more structured and planned because I'm not naturally so. And they look at me going, wow, Erik, I just love your spontaneity and your, you know, you just live life to the fullest. You make it up as you go along. Wow, that must be amazing. But that's short-lived, though. And so when the relationship then moves beyond a couple of months, I had someone say to me the other day, 90 days, 3 months is the kind of the test for a new relationship. And she was saying that, you know what, for the first 90 days, it's relatively easy to pretend to be who you think they want you to be. But after 90 days, your true, authentic self has no option but to emerge. And, you know, so that's where relationships then become interesting. And I've, over the years, created this model, if you want to call it that I call the partnership model. And if we think of a word to describe the first 3 months of a relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship or a friendship or even a new work relationship, you know, you go and work at a new company. One word that kind of always defines those first 3 months is glee. It is amazing. It's joyful. It's fun. It's happy. The other person can do no wrong in your eyes. And so that's how any relationship starts. But after 3 months or a period of time, you then decide, well, maybe we're going to spend more time together. We're going to do some sleepovers overnight. Or maybe, you know, these days it moves so quickly, we might move in together. And then you realize that along with the glee, there is a fee, right? So, you know, I'm seeing a lady at the moment who is ultra endurance athlete. Well, you know, so am I. I do crazy things. And she's training for a huge race in June, which is requiring several hours a day of training. And she's running a business, you know, so both our lives are pretty crazy. But so after the initial glee, the first fee that might appear in my example is, you know, we really don't spend too much time together, particularly during the week. And on some weekends, I'm doing long training sessions. She's doing long training sessions. So what are those fees that then begin to appear in a relationship? So we move from glee to fee, or we move in together. And, you know, I realize that she might not be as neat and tidy as I am. You know, like most ladies, you leave your underwear lying all over the bathroom floor instead of in the washing basket. No, I'm just kidding. That's what men tend to do. But point is, we realize that there are some fees. You know, I'm not very structured, she says. You know, Erik, can you just think things through a little bit? You don't need to charge in where angels fear to tread 5-6 times a week. When the fees in a relationship begin to outweigh the glee, the relationship quality drops to below what I call the line of awesome. And so the minute the glee disappears, the fees increase. What's the next thing we hear in relationships? we hear that it's all about me. And individuals then say, but I'm not getting enough attention, and I'm not getting enough of this, and me, me, me. It becomes all about me. And the moment a relationship becomes more about me than about the relationship or about what both of us are getting out of it, the next easiest thing to do is to flee. And so people flee from relationships, and they might not even flee physically, but we flee emotionally, right? We see that in marriages, or if people who have moved in together, who, it isn't just so as simple as like saying, well, goodbye, I'm out of here. We flee emotionally, but we still stay physically. In business, I joke and say, people resign, but they stay on the payroll. But you know what? The fascinating thing, though, is that many, many relationships don't break up when we get to me or flee stage. So what is it? Why do some relationships last? Because if you think about any relationship you're in or you've been in, you've gone through phases of glee. You've gone through phases of fee. If we think of what the world's been through in the last 4 years in terms of COVID, unemployment, rising interest rates, cost of living, etc., the fees outside of our relationship are literally increasing by the day. So why do we then stay in a relationship? If it's not great being here, but sometimes it is, why do we stay? And I stumbled on this secret. The secret to staying is that we can see what's possible through we. And when we realize what we can do together, the potential that we have, as opposed to the potential that I have and that you have, that's when our relationship moves back above the line of awesome, and we build an amazing relationship, and we build an amazing future together. And we work through the fees as and when they arise to find the glee again. We find glee when we can see what's possible through we.
I totally agree. So there are a couple of things I wrote down, because many people, speaking about 90 days, sometimes people say about 2 months, we got used to each other. And many people tend to make important decisions about moving together or about being in an exclusive relationship in this time where we are on the high of our emotions, when we are not able to think, because it triggers our, unconscious mind. We are not thinking, we're feeling only. And I constantly say to my clients that to make some decisions about moving in together, you have really to spend at least 2 months together before really moving. Because after 2 months being together, we don't see this beautiful face anymore. We see the socks on the floor.
The fees, yes.
The fees, yes, it starts. Life is coming. And, like you say, I like your description, but I describe it in different words. I said, in your mind, so stop feeling just in your mind, try to return you back to this beginning, like you said, to get back to glee, but you can do it conscious. You can say, so in our, why did I like this person first of all? Why did I decide to move into this relationship? Because I notice this and these qualities. Why do I not notice them right now? And there's something like get back, like in the films. I start watching the film from the beginning, and then it might work.
That's such an important point. And I think the reason the fees increase and we stop finding the glee is because when the fees increase and we get to me, I stop contributing. And when I stop contributing, when I stop giving love, all of a sudden, then the relationship becomes conditional. And so I will give you love. I will give you acceptance. I will give you what you require from the relationship only if I get what I need, because I'm focused on me and my needs. And strong relationships are strong because it's unconditional. And I will keep giving the positive stuff. without expecting something back, because it's not about me. It's about what I can contribute and not about what I can take.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yesterday I had really amazing conversation with one woman, and she asked the question. She's in relationship, and she put some conditions. I said, what kind of? Oh, he doesn't want to do what I want to. Give me example, because I don't understand this theoretical stuff. Just give me example. What is the problem? The problem is, just listen, don't laugh. She likes to spend time somewhere in the forest, in the nature, not just sitting around in the garden and drinking beer, but going somewhere, hiking, exploring nature in its natural thing. And his way to spend weekends is more staying at home, being comfortable, just relaxing. And this is the problem for their relationship. I said, you know what? If you're so into this natural hiking, walking in the woods, find some pathfinder group and go with them once a week to your forest and enjoy it. Because if he needs his time alone to build up his testosterone and just build up after a hard working week, it's his style it's his way. And she noticed it from the beginning. It hasn't started really currently right now. It was from the beginning, but people really decide to get apart because of she wants into the forest and he wants to stay at home.
It's about differing interests, and it's so fascinating how often people go into a relationship and think, well, yeah, there's some things I don't like, but I can change that.
It never works. It never works. No.
There's an old story about the lady who gets married, and she's very nervous at church at the top of the aisle. And the minister can see that she's really nervous. So he goes up to her and says, listen, are you okay? What's the problem? She goes, no, I'm really nervous. I'm not sure I'm going to remember what to do. And he says, don't worry. Firstly, you're going to walk down the aisle. When you get to the bottom at the altar, we'll sing a hymn, and then you can just look to me as the minister, and I will lead the service and the ceremony. And many guests recalled during the wedding that they saw when she walked past the aisle, down the aisle past them, she said, I'll alter him. I'll alter him. And we go into these relationships going, well, there are these attributes that I really like. There are a lot of attributes that I don't like. I can change that. And I think more often than not, that is just such a recipe for ultimate disaster. And we need to find a relationship in which we can be authentic, we can be ourselves, that we have similar interests, but also create some space for us to pursue our own individual interests and activities. If we, doing everything together, spending every moment together, that's also not realistic. At the end of the day, it's all about balance. But I think common interests are so important, whether that be religion or sport or faith or reading interests, whatever. What's that golden thread? Go back to that irrational decision you made right at the beginning. What were those attributes that made you fall in love with your significant other? And if there's no common ground between what you've got and what they've got, it probably isn't a long-term thing. And that's okay too. Not all relationships are meant to be long-term. Sometimes, so I don't believe any relationship is wasted, if you want to call it that, because we emerge from every relationship as a different person, having grown.
One of the things I believe, and I teach my clients, I say, so when you start any relationship, just think it's not unlimited. There will be the end. One of you both die, or you will get apart. So if you really realize it's not forever, it will end, and one day in some way you live here and now, and not plan 20 years in front. What I notice at many of my clients, probably this analytical style of people. Yeah, I'm feeling very well right now. But what will be with us in 20 years when he continue doing this? Who knows what will be in 20 years? These 2 years of COVID and all this was happening now showed us that, tomorrow might not happen for all of us.
That is so true, right? We've got to live every day like it's our last. And we've got to end every day like it's our last. And by that, I mean, I see in relationships and in some couples is how how they hold the fees against each other. And, I've got a fairly simple thing is like, you should never go to bed angry. Sure, we can have arguments. Sure, we can have disagreements, but sort it out before you go to bed, because tomorrow might not be there. The sense of permanence that we have is a result of the routines and the rituals that we have in life and in relationships. And the more powerful our routines are, the less we accept our mortality, because we think that tomorrow will be just like today, and we'll wake up at the same time and we'll do the same things and go to work at the same place, and as a couple argue about the same things. But tomorrow is not guaranteed. Anything can happen. And so we've got to live every day like it is our last, because it could be. And would you want the last memory that your partner has of you to be a bad one? Because you could go to work and not come back.
Yeah. From your point of view, what is the secret of a happy relationship? I know in your bio you wrote about a lot about leadership, and I always say that it doesn't matter where do we communicate, in our work or at home with our children, the rules are the same. And from your experience as coach for leadership, for management, what is the secret, or what are the rules for romantic relationship?
I think the rules for romantic relationships are pretty similar to leadership. And at the end of the day, the golden thread, a relationship is a relationship, whether you sleep in the same bed or not, because you're also only spending so much time in the bedroom or being romantic. Beyond that, you've got a normal relationship with like various levels. And so the secret for me is, as I took you through that partnership model, the secret to a great relationship is to see what's possible through we. How can I actualize not myself, but how can I actualize who I am through the other person? And how can I help them actualize who they are? So when we see what's possible through we, and how much better that is than being on my own or alone or single, that's the secret to a fantastic relationship. And that's how we go back to building the glee, despite all the things that could go wrong in a relationship.
Cool. Really interesting. And one other question. Many people, especially women, believe if people argue or if people have conflicts in their relationship, it's already a start of the end, like broken cup. Have you any recommendation for people how to avoid conflicts or how to stop conflicts?
So firstly, I think it's unrealistic to avoid all conflict. And if you go into a relationship and go, and I've heard couples say, we've been together for 6 years and we've not had a single fight. Well, you know what? The next one you have is probably going to be the first and the last one. And so conflict is not bad, right? Conflict results from how we express ourselves differently, how we might have different needs at certain times or in certain portions of a relationship. So conflict is not bad. What is bad is not dealing with conflict or personalizing conflict. And so what I often hear couples say, when there is conflict, they say, but you're always late, or you're always this, or you're always that. And number one, why are you personalizing it? Focus on the issue, not on the person. Play the ball, not the player. And then secondly, stop generalizing. Because if you say to, if you say to your significant other, you're always late, or you're always arguing with me, that's a lie, because it isn't always, right? It's just in this moment, you're generalizing. And so how do we solve conflict is play the issue, not the person. Don't personalize it, and don't generalize. And then make as I say, I've got this definitive, if you want to call it, rule, which it isn't really, but I try and never go to bed angry with my significant other, because that then, how do you wake up the next morning? Well, I don't know. You shouldn't. Maybe you don't wake up, but don't go to bed angry. Sort it out. Don't let it linger. Don't let it fester. And let's be honest, make-up sex is probably the best.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting conversation, because it's really like, I think most people, even if it's about romantic relationships, they would like to understand, is it right, is it wrong? I think we all are a little bit product of the system, product of the rules, of the structure, and from the Bible, so the what is good, what is bad. We like to be feeling good. So that's why it's really understanding what the phase we are and how can we increase our relationship, not through changing the person, but through changing our behavior, because we can change only us, not the other people.
You're absolutely 100% correct. And if we think of behavioral economics principles that govern behavior in relationships, I think one of the sort of driving forces is this whole concept of pleasure versus pain. And what we know is that pain is a far stronger motivator than pleasure or feelings of comfort and joy. Every decision you've ever made in life, you've made by asking yourself subconsciously, if I do this, will I experience pain, or will I experience joy and pleasure? And we want to avoid pain as much as possible. We suffer from loss aversion. And sometimes, maybe that perspective is what helps us to find the glee in our relationship again, is what could I lose by making this decision? I think in a world where relationships are a lot more fluid than they were 20 years ago, probably because we perceive that we have more options. Before Facebook, you never had any other options. You met your significant other, you got married to them, and you lived happily ever after for the most part. All of a sudden now, all your high school crushes, etc., are suddenly flooding your time. And you go, well, now you have an argument with your significant other. And you go, and someone's face pops up in your social media time, and you go, well, maybe that's an option. Oh, she's single too. And so the immediate pleasure, the short-term pleasure or ego drives us to go there. And the real perspective should be, what is the pain that I'm avoiding by going there? And what would be the pain by pursuing something that allows my current relationship to be fluid when it isn't really, and when it shouldn't be? So, loss aversion, I think, should be seen as is definitely more powerful in keeping relationships together. But the pursuit of joy, or immediate joy, short-term joy, is what shoots relationships in the foot.
You mentioned Facebook. Facebook wasn't as bad, so our high school crushes, it's not as bad, because Tinder changed the market. And all this Amazon thinking, Tinder thinking, it changed our brains so much, plus TikTok, this short time attention. It's really, people really don't realize who they are. Many people, especially many long-term singles, I would say, so long-term singles, they completely lost in this digital world, plus COVID and all of this. people are really lost. They don't know how to start. Men, especially men, they really believe that writing to her hello on Tinder, it's already conversation enough. There
Absolutely.
are so many, yes, there are so many videos. I recorded so many videos explaining or in webinars that hello for women, just hello, it's offense. Oh, how are you? No, even worse, how are you? No, hello is okay. How are you? It's offense, and there is a psychology behind, because if you ask how are you without telling people how are you, it means
Yes.
you are interfere in your life without telling anything about yourself. Especially if it's a foreign, because I'm international matchmaker and it's always translation in the head. For native speakers, how are you? It's okay. But for foreigners, it's really the question, how are you? How am I? What should I tell about my health, about my wealth? What's the answer? What's the right answer to this question? We see it really like translated in our head. It's awful. And the more me and my colleagues explain, the worse it becomes, because people still don't learn.
No, and to be honest, like in work environments, for example, we were taught as we grow up, you greet someone, hi, how are you? But walk past someone in the corridor in the office and go, how are you? Firstly, no one really listens. It's just the standard response, I'm fine. Fine is an acronym. It stands for freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. But do this test. Like next time someone says to you, how are you? Tell them how you really are, and tell them how you're worried about this and that and interest rates. And they're going to flee immediately, because no one really cares how you are. It's just like this conversation start. But I love what you say around this kind of Tinder culture, because I think what it ultimately has done is for men and women, it's commoditized relationships. And by that, so we go back to that first item we spoke about in terms of that irrational decision when you first met your significant other. Now it literally just comes down to a photograph or 2 or 3 photographs. And that's what you're making that very first decision on. And then a couple of really contrived sort of, copy about your interests and what you're looking for. And even that, how difficult is that to write? Because we're not really quite sure what we want. We're not really quite sure how to express that. But ultimately, in this Tinder culture, we're making the very first decision based on a very shallow perception of the other person.
Yeah, I can speak hours about this, making decisions, seeing a couple of photos, especially men. Again, men, they are criticized right now most of all, because they look at the photos where everything made, all faces made, plus filters, plus all these, additional effects. Oh, I like your natural beauty, and I always really chuckle. Now there is nothing natural on this woman, and but men don't see the in their, I don't know, teenager imaginations. Maybe she was on his poster on his wall, and he still remembers this. But I have very hard job.
No, it's a very brave new world.
Yeah, it's new world, and exactly, I think you have to explain it to your leadership every day in your on the daily basis, because world is changing, and unfortunately many people don't understand that we really have to change with the world. We cannot stay how we used to be.
Absolutely, and the world's changing faster than we have ever imagined that it would.
Yes, artificial intelligence, it's another topic, it's another conversation, because plus to Tinder and Amazon and Facebook, we got artificial intelligence, and now you don't know, are you talking to the person or you're talking to ChatGPT?
I haven't even thought about that, but absolutely. And I think it comes down to, in a relationship perspective, how authentic we're allowed to be in our relationships. And if you are going into a relationship under pretense and trying to be who you think your partner wants you to be, that's not authentic, that's not sustainable, and sooner or later, that is going to come to like a very, a bad end. And I often say that all relationships end badly, otherwise they wouldn't end.
It's true. It's true. It's the similar thing what I said about that all relationship ends one day because it's end badly. Yeah. Thank you for so optimistic.
Yeah, but as I said, it's okay for relationships to end. I know somebody who has been in a relationship with the father of their kid for 35 years, and it's been a completely abusive relationship, emotionally, physically. And in a way, it's tragic because this friend of mine is a very successful C-suite executive, but doesn't have the self-belief outside of work to move on, to build new relationships, to build better relationships, because the core of who they are has been systematically broken down through emotional and physical abuse over a period of 30 years. Yet, they can be remarkably successful in the boardroom. It's just such a weird dynamic. But it also allows us to understand how powerful relationships are in terms of shaping who we are as whole individuals and as authentic individuals.
Yeah, true. And I have a lot of other examples on the other side. Again, what women believe. Women believe if he is handsome, tall, successful, with money, so it automatically means he knows how to treat women right. And I'm always on the side of the truth, and I always try to explain that his success in business, like your example, success in business doesn't mean automatically that he's able to treat women. He knows how to treat women. It's other level of communication. He can be very successful in his boy's life, but when he goes to the girls, it's so different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating world we live in. And ultimately, though, if we think about it, when we say we're in a long-term relationship or, a full-time, like, how much time do you actually spend with your significant other? A couple of hours at night and weekends. The rest of the time, you're spending with work colleagues or away at the office or working from home or engaged with other people. And, if we go back to the fees that we pay to find the glee in our relationship, is we actually spend so little time with our significant other that once we have that perspective, it almost drives us to spend more quality time with each other as opposed to just vanilla time where we kind of do our own thing. How do we really embrace those few hours? Because it's like 2 days out of every 7 and a couple of hours at night. The rest of the time we spend at work with other people, with strangers.
Yeah, true.
Fascinating.
I know one other researches about this quality time and how much do we really need to develop our relationship, and their numbers say about 10 minutes. It's really enough to spend with our romantic partner 10 minutes to speak to him, to talk to him 10 minutes, but not about money, not about home cleaning, not about children, not about problems. So it can be about films, it can be about vaccination and do they like Trump or don't. Something like doesn't matter, but not about what's happening in the house, but like outside world. 10 minutes. Really interesting because people think they communicate to each other, but they discuss about rubbish or about problems in the school or how to spend money. It means they talk to each other, but realistically they don't.
Yes, and so that communication is what I would call transactional. We're only talking about the transactions that allow our lives to run smoothly. we're not actually engaging each other emotionally by having transactional conversations. I often work as a catalyst or team catalyst to sports teams, international teams, trophy-winning teams. One of the conversations we have all the time is the function of what we call fundamental relationships within a team environment. And a fundamental relationship is what you would have with your significant other. In other words, you don't just work together. You're not just running a life together. You're each other's confidant, soulmate, you're friends. And there's this kind of understanding in team sport that fundamental relationships are not that important. Come to work, show up, do what you're supposed to do, deliver the results, and then leave and go and have your fundamental relationship somewhere else. And whilst that is possible, it's incredibly tiresome. And we find that sports teams who don't build fundamental relationships within the team have higher levels of stress, higher levels of burnout. Yes, you can perform, but not consistently for long periods of time. So back to our relationship is exactly what you've just said. Yes, we might only have to communicate for 10 or 20 minutes a day, but that cannot be transactional. It must be fundamental in terms of seeing what's possible through we and understanding stuff beyond just the day-to-day routines.
Cool. So much things to think about. Thank you very much, Erik, for your time. It was really very interesting, and I wrote down your system. I will use it. I will use it at my work. And dear spectators, dear audience, if you have any questions to Erik, you can write down in the comments under this video, or you can Google, find him, and continue this amazing conversation and ask all questions, or maybe hire him for your leadership problems.
I look forward to that. Ksenia, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show, and it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.